This is on. Hello, everyone, for another episode now of the Evolve panel. This is our second panel. Special Thursday today because we are hosting Mark Weinstein. So, just a quick intro. First off, thanks. I want to thank our sponsors, AirMeet, for making this event possible. And their support help us create valuable discussions and connections always. I'll just talk a little bit about the event structure and the overview today. Um, we're going to be talking about Mark's career, what is surveillance capitalism, privacy, and anonymity, navigating Web 2, Web 3, saving our children from the abyss, free speech versus moderation, facts, opinions, and lies, and who decides, the Web 4, and restoration. I will quickly introduce Mark and then our other panelists as well, and then we'll get at it. So Mark Weinstein, he's a pioneer in social media and a leading advocate for privacy in the digital age. As the founder of the earliest social networking platforms, he has been at the forefront of shaping how we connect online. Today, Mark is the best-selling author of Restoring Our Sanity Online, a revolutionary social framework, and a sought-after speaker championing ethical technology and the future of privacy-first social networks. Endorsements from visionaries like Steve Wozniak and Sir Tim Berners-Lee back his insights. We have also today Edilsa Bueno. She's an Evolve ambassador, a seasoned retail and e-commerce leader with over 15 years of experience driving growth for global brands, specializing in digital transformation and strategic operations. She has held leadership roles across various industries, including fashion and tech. She's at the forefront of innovative retail strategies, helping businesses scale and adapt to the ever changing commerce landscape. Cornelia Reitinga. Cornelia is a results driven professional with deep expertise in consultative sales, specializing in sell side ad tech, focusing on CTV retail media. Her impressive career spans leadership roles at startups that achieve successful acquisitions, including Accepter, Navtech Media, Nokia, and Live Rail, which was acquired by Facebook. She's currently at SaaS and she leads go to market strategies and sales for SaaS 360 Match, a first party ad server across CTV, retail media, and finance sectors. She's known for her innovative approach and strategic insight. She excels in driving growth, building strategic partnerships, and navigating the dynamic edtech landscape. And finally, Alessandro Desanque. Alessandro is a seasoned consultant, helping media owners across news, retail, sports, and entertainment sectors unlock their revenue potential. He has an international experience working with companies like News Corp, Yahoo, and Telefonica. Alessandro now advises clients such as the Financial Times Strategies, Dentsu International, and DPG Media Group. His diverse background across edtech, media, and research gives him a unique perspective on navigating the AI and privacy-driven transformation shaping the industry. So, right, let's get at it. Mark, welcome. I divided this into 8 blocks, and we're going to be covering your book. I was very fortunate to have a conversation with you, I think 2 months ago, and then I met you. We met and had a chat in Portugal. So I'd like to start with the big picture. I'd like you to share a bit of your entrepreneurial background, and then we'll cover the other topics.
Thank you, Carlos. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's great to be with everybody here this morning. And I was just in Lisbon, was it last week? It seems so recent. So I'm back on Pacific daylight time here. So listen, I'm one of the guys, one of the early inventors of social media. This is back in the 90s. Some of you may not have been alive, or you may have been, 4 or 5 years old. So, but there was a whole movement. It was called Web 1, for those of us who remember. And I was a big part of it back then. And my sites, superfamily.com and superfriends.com, we call them .com then. We actually said superfamily.com. Were PC Magazine top 100 sites. We also had superfamilia.com and a whole bunch of others as part of the branding exercise. So I'm in this from the beginning. And, fast forward, I later on built a site called MeWe, M-E-W-E, MeWe, which is still around. That's about 20 million people and is moving itself into Web3. I left MeWe about almost 2.5 years ago, exactly, and decided that what I needed to do, because MeWe was a complete competitor to Facebook, and it had no ads, no targeting, no boosted content, the antithesis. Some people called it the anti-Facebook at the time. It still exists, still around. But I left it because the problem is bigger than one company. The problem is really surveillance capitalism. It's a business model where we are spied on, targeted, manipulated. Our thoughts, our purchases, our votes, our opinions are all manipulated by advertisers, marketers, political operatives, whoever pays the top dollar to Meta or other companies to get our attention and to change our opinions. So, here I am. And so I've written the book, as Carlos so, nicely said, Restoring Our Sanity Online. As Carlos said, it's endorsed by the inventor of the World Wide Web. Sir Tim Berners-Lee, for those who don't know, is world-renowned as the inventor of the World Wide Web. And of course, Steve Wozniak is the co-founder of Apple, and other wonderful people have also endorsed it. Woz and Tim say it's a must-read, it's a vital read, but we've got to fix this mess. We've got to fix it now. We've got to take our power back. And there are many ways that we can do this.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark, for this intro. Edilsa, perhaps you'd like to jump in. You have worked for a big tech, some major companies, but one of them being Amazon, right? So that's also why I wanted to have you here. If you have a question, I think that would be great.
Well, one, I wanted to thank you. What a great read, comprehensive about so many topics that I wanted to hear more about. With the ultimate question being, is social media good? I thought one of the most interesting thoughts as you painted the picture of how do we create a more civil, a more neutral environment in the spaces that you actually decided to still exclude children under 13. And so my question to you is is social media good? If it is set up correctly, why do children under 13 need to be excluded if it is good in nature?
That's such a great question, and no one has ever asked me that specific question. Mm-hmm. First of all, kids under 13 use our phones. They can text, they can take pictures, they can use the camera, they can look at pictures. Certainly you decide if they're going to look at in the United States, it's PBS Kids, safe, environments for safe shows, Bluey, which is international, things like that. But remember, and this is going to even before this era of social media, kids 13 and under believe that advertisements are telling the truth.
Yeah.
These studies have been done for decades. So when you plug kids into social media, and listen, we know that in countries like Spain, but in particular right now, Australia is in the process of introducing legislation to ban kids from social media until 16. And so it's interesting. And the United States Surgeon General also said he believes 16 is the right age because of the impressionableness. Yeah. And so I believe, for me, I think 16 is unrealistic, particularly in the United States. I don't think we would ever get that passed. I have young children. I think 13 is reasonable, along with very new guidelines. As you might have seen, first of all, I'm one of the world's leading privacy advocates. I have been for well over 10 years. And in order to save privacy, we actually have to introduce a new system called user ID verification. So we have to know that a 13-year-old is talking to a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old that they've accepted the contact from that's real, instead of a 50-year-old creep. So we've got to really protect our kids and protect grown-ups when you talk about the opinions. Bots and trolls from adversarial countries, and of course also from different points of view, but bots and trolls are disrupting democracy. You don't know who it is who gets in. You might, recently I had an article that had like almost 4 million views on Twitter, and it was like, millions of bots and trolls who were upset, who wanted to create incite. It's just a mess. This is why The Guardian has just announced they're not going to even post on X anymore. It's all full of bots and trolls. So we have to do a couple of things together. And I do believe 13 is still young, frankly, but in the right social media environment where we know they're talking to their friends, where we know there's no boosted content, no marketing, no advertising, where if there's any problem, the site knows the user identification of the person causing the problem. So I think we can manage that.
Just to piggyback on that, because what I'm hearing a lot about is the critical thinking skills. That's what's missing and when you start to think about the age barrier, and what I loved about what you included in the book is there is some critical thinking features being incorporated into the network. And so how do you feel about that? What do you think is your duty as a social media platform to encourage critical thinking as you go into it?
Wow, another brilliant question. Critical thinking, which has always been sort of weak for younger kids because they believe so much about what they see as truth. Now, this is where, there aren't really good ways to regulate teaching critical thinking. The United States, MIT has come up with a great college program that they're now working to re-engineer to teach elementary school kids and middle school kids how to critically think. But this really falls on the parents, too. Mm-hmm. So we've got to get the parents to teach kids, and we can create programs for parents to teach kids about critical thinking, about bullying, what is bullying, what looks like, what is it, what does bullying look like, so the kids aren't victimized even by other kids, because we know kids bully other kids. Yep. And we also, we've talked about this since the beginning of social media almost. It's time for us to really step up and teach kids and have programs in schools and make sure that it's easy to stop a bully, that it's recognizable, so that we don't end up with child suicide for no good reason because they feel victimized and they feel like their whole life is online. So there's a lot to do here. You're hitting on exactly, listen, and also it is a critical thinking. Hello, all the grown-ups in the room. Yeah. We need help because bots and trolls are tricking us to believe things that aren't true. We've got to shut it up.
Yeah, I'll let Carlos direct you next, but that's why I'm a loyalty expert. I build a lot of loyalty programs in the past, both at Amazon and at Gap. And one of the things that intrigues me is just how we could use loyalty to increase those on those type of platforms. Could we be introducing quizzes to help people guide what they should be looking at, what's good information, what's bias, as opposed to necessarily be fact-checking, but have people just develop their skills within the platform. So a lot of playground, and I'd love the push again in your book to be good at the center. And how do we enforce that?
Oh, so I think we need to have somebody mute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got it. Carlos, can you hear me? Okay, so, and just to wrap up with Adissa, listen, that's a great idea. Here's the challenge. Yeah. If you had Elon Musk on X create, critical thinking sort of quizzes and things like that, it's going to be biased. So one way or the other. So, there's a real question, how can we do that effectively? Do we need to create an institute that's not biased? That's, so very, very important, very great comments. Thank you.
The next question is, first, I'd like you to talk about surveillance capitalism, because we have two experts here who work with monetization. Cornelia, she told me a couple of stories back when she was at Facebook. Not sure if you want to share all of them, Cornelia, but very interesting. And so I think this is the perfect segue, to talk about surveillance capitalism, and then Cornelia can jump in as well with her experience and ask about privacy and anonymity and share some of her experience.
Great. Thank you. All right, listen, everybody, surveillance capitalism. Let me start with a quote from a friend of mine, Yael Eisenstadt, who used to work for America's CIA. Okay, and then after she was done with the CIA, Facebook hired her. She only lasted at Facebook for 6 months because she was supposed to help them with privacy. When she quit, she said the following. She said, Facebook knows more about you than the CIA does. So, that kind of sums up what we call surveillance capitalism. Shoshana Zuboff at Harvard has written a big book about it. I have a 9-minute TED Talk on this, everybody. 9 minutes, very fast, very entertaining. The Rise of Surveillance Capitalism, Mark Weinstein. So you can find that one. So surveillance capitalism is very simple. It's where our data is used to target us. So in other words, everything that we do, everything we say, where we are, who we're talking to, when, our opinions, our thoughts, everything is captured in what's called the data ecosystem. It's bundled into a packet. Algorithms are then, engineered to use this to identify what we're thinking, what we need, what our opinions are, how to manipulate our opinions. Now, here's the problem. Today, so that's how it's been since Mark Zuckerberg declared in 2010 that privacy is a social norm of the past. He said that at the Crunchy Awards in San Francisco. That's actually why I came back to social media in 2011 after I watched that interview in 2010. So, but it's just gotten to a point where, even our news is filtered. If you're on Meta, if you're on Facebook, what the survey says, half of Meta's users get their news on Meta, but Meta's deciding what news you see, and AI now supercharges these algorithms. So with AI on these tracking and data collecting and targeting algorithms, AI can almost anticipate your thought before you think it, can A/B test you in nanoseconds, and so we are really at an inflection point of a very big challenge for our own sort of original free thinking and critical thinking.
Cornelia, you shared a few stories about why you also needed to take some time off after.
That was just really what I really didn't like was because I've been selling ad service. We have to monetize content, so people can access content for free, and there's an exchange of data. And if I, as a viewer or reader or a viewer, agree to, yes, you can use my data, and I get a personalized experience because of that, it's all good. But it's all, for me, it's always about the privacy versus anonymity. I still want to have some sort of control and log out. And I think now in Europe, I think Facebook now has, because of the EU, has given some sort of option where you can have an ad-free experience. No, I think that's just all smoke and mirrors. My experience back then, when we sort of like rolled out more ad products to premium publishers to get the audience network from Facebook. So you get all the data from your Facebook usage, and you're being tracked there. And then you read an article somewhere on a newspaper site, you're being targeted with Facebook ads, and it was all great. I personally never liked it because if you're a premium news publisher providing premium content, you shouldn't really place those annoying little Facebook ads that you get from really bad brands. And there was this one occasion where there was a newspaper article about just a recent terrorist attack. We had a carousel at the bottom for ads for there were like army boots and toy guns, highly inappropriate. And I went back, look, we need to be able to block certain advertisers, and they just didn't, because they are spending money and either take it or leave it. I just don't like that approach where it's very advertiser driven. We just need to make all the ad dollars. How the user experiences it, how our customers are experiencing it, it's completely irrelevant. And I don't think fan of Facebook Audience Network, what was it called, is still being applied on newspaper publishers anyway. But these are just one of the things that I just did not like at all. Everything was being tracked. And then also the way I used to use social media. In the beginning, it was fun. I live abroad and my family back home in Austria. It was easy to connect with them. But then the algorithm changed. It was just news feeds, and I did not see content anymore that I wanted to see either on Facebook or even on Instagram. And it's just all this influencer content or other content being pushed in front of me, and just so many ads. And I find that really irritating, and to a point where right now I barely use it anymore. I have deleted Facebook and Instagram off my phone. I don't really miss it. I talk to my family and friends that are all over the world directly now. So my question to you, Mark, really is like, that monetization. So I know MeWe, there's no monetization, but I think monetization and then all that algorithm using that all that data to highly targeted influence you has changed my personal view how I do social media these days. I've stopped using Twitter a long time ago. I have Blue Sky now. It's quite pretty, but I'm sure it's going to turn nasty very soon. I'm over it. How even if you eliminate all the bots and the privacy and is set accordingly, you're not being tracked at every move, or at least you only let that data track that you as a user, you allow them to track it. I don't believe I'm the only one. I just see social media as annoying these days. Even if we get all the bots out of the picture, if content moderation gets better, which is still really bad, can we even change it back to how it used to be 10, 15 years ago, where it was fun and now it's not anymore?
Thank you for that question. And this ties into and this is question about, can it be good for you? That question, and this is really important. And this is where, again, I'm holding the book up because the word restoring. And, as one of the inventors of social media, really one of the earliest, the idea was really beautiful, really rather brilliant. It was like, okay, now, we had email already. In the 90s, we had email, and email was already, just very flat, right? I call it a little bit ghastly because it's one-dimensional. You can't get a sense of the nuance of the words, what the writer is really saying, and we misinterpret email a lot. So the invention of social media, of community portals, was to keep us, family and friends, and like-minded people better connected, make the world more connected, make the world more friendly, and allow us to stay in touch, because even back 30 years ago, families were broken up. People could work around the world. We could live and work in different places. And so this was great, just a beautiful way to make the world a more connected and smaller place and to keep us connected with our loved ones. So the answer is, there is a chapter in the book, and the title of that chapter is Surprise, Social Media Can Be Good for Your Mental Health. Can be good for you. So the answer is it can be. So, and this is why, because of the connectedness. So, and it can make the world a friendlier, more harmonious, more loving place. However, we've gotten off track. Now, first of all, for everybody, the word user is interesting because while we're the quote user, we're not the customer. And so, we are the product that's sold to the customer. And so that's how the system works. So that's a big shift. You want to look at a big shift from Web 1 to Web 2. In Web 1, the user was the customer. We had to serve and delight the customer. There was no boosted content. There were targeted ads. There was none of this BS. Now, MeWe, by the way, which I'm still on the board of, which I left, but I designed the infrastructure of, had no boosted content, no targeted ads, had a premium model. We had a membership premium model, and our revenue model was on track. So you give freemium is where you give people what they love for free, make sure they love it. And then you have options for them to purchase other products. For us, subscription, I was a big fan of monthly recurring revenue. Mm-hmm. So if you have a feature or feature set that's additional that users will, because they want to support you and they want the features, then you get every month, you get a nice piece of revenue from that, and you're serving the user. So that's really important. So keep in mind, we're currently not the customer, we're the product. And then the idea of ethical advertising. So I actually own 11 patents that are assigned to the parent company of MeWe on ethical advertising. I started looking at how can we do advertising ethically back in 2012. Nobody else was looking at that. So there's a way to do it. There's a way to actually personalize and anonymize ad models. So, and that's actually one of the big solutions, because I understand, I'm a capitalist. I love capitalism. I love being able to be an entrepreneur and come up with, entrepreneurs get to think up brilliant ideas that serve humanity and then, delight their customers and then make money from that. That's a great economic system, but capitalism, when it's unregulated, turns into what I call monopolism, because monopolies are born from capitalism unless governments regulate capitalism to keep the free market available. And that's what's happened here. Meta is a huge monopoly. Google is a huge monopoly. The United States government just found Google guilty of what's called antitrust, guilty of being a monopoly. So they're about to sanction Google. So we're going to make room for more search engines. We need the free market to work.
Yes. But how do you see, I mean, in terms of the trust or the experience? Because I've stopped sharing personal content on social media. My family and friends have stopped sharing personal content on social media. They still kind of dip in, dip out, but they're not heavy users anymore. Do you think this new Web3 can restore the trust, and we can go back? And I still think when it comes to advertising, I don't have a problem with ads as long as they are, you know, properly targeted and not in your face. There's good quality ads and bad ads, as long as it's just part of the user experience, very native in the user experience, without the sponsored content is not bad as long as it's pointed out properly. But it's like, how do people go back and just are more? I'm not a TikTok influencer. I'm not talking about Gen Z now who really like that, but my generation, like Gen X and my parents, they don't really do social media anymore.
Well, listen, these are such great questions, everybody. So first of all, just to be clear, I talk about Web3 in the book, and I did say that MeWe, the management team that has come, I hired a new team when I left. I hired a new CEO. He built his new team. Then they got new funding from a Web3 advocate, and they're moving. MeWe's moving into Web3 in a very strong way. I'm not a fan of Web3. I don't think Web3 solves the issues of social media. Also, Web3 doesn't scale properly. The blockchain, Web3 is built on blockchain from an engineering perspective, and cryptocurrencies from a currency perspective. And Web3 doesn't work for multi-featured social media companies because blockchain doesn't scale. So, and Sir Tim Berners-Lee, a very famous Brit who was knighted, that's why we call him Sir now, and he's a friend of mine. He's been an advisor for 14 years. And that's, he's, as he says, this vision of this book he shares. So what we have to do is get data portability so that we can inspire the free market to work again. So imagine, because you're not going to get, Cornelia, what you want is not going to happen on Facebook. It's not going to happen on Instagram. It's not going to happen on X. It's not going to happen on Snap for our kids. But the free market has stopped working because we could have been talking about those companies 10 years ago too, and as the big ones with no competition. So we need the free market to start again. And part of this is what we call data portability or data interoperability. Now, Sir Tim, the reason I bring up Sir Tim is because his engineering team has come up with what he calls solid wallets, which are solid is sort of like the branding, and solid wallets includes a data pod. So you control all your data. If you want to share it with advertisers, you choose to share it. If you don't, you don't. Your wallet is there. And the whole point is a protocol for uploading content to a site or taking your content off and moving it to a site or a social media experience that's more aligned with what you want. And once we get the free market working again, this will happen. This is all coming. So this stuff, Tim's team has engineered these things. Data portability is being talked about in the United States. I've been involved in the government's antitrust case against Meta. This is all coming. It just can't come fast enough. And then we'll have the choice that you want private sharing with your family and friends in a way that, text can't do. Because what we've done? We've all gone to these chat threads, these text threads on our phones off of social media, which function very well, but they're very limited. It's a photo, it's a video, it's a conversation. That's about it. So we're going to get it back.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Alessandro.
I have a question, and well, thank you for the wisdom shared until now. I have a question. I am more my expertise is more on the ad tech and media side, not much on social media. And I see that there is the other side of the coin. The issue is not only about our sanity on social media and what social media is doing to us, but also the fact that what should have been a reference for us in terms of facts, in terms of news, like quality media, has got enslaved into the attack vicious cycle, which meant for 15 years, basically, instead of focusing on content, many have focused on the ad slot. And that was the business model. So long story short, going back to privacy, GDPR and then other regulations in other parts of the world have introduced the concept of consent. Now I see a worrying trend also in premium in quality media of consent or pay, where you either give your data or you give your money. I don't think this is the right approach. I think that the consent should be based on trust. And there is a lot of being said about saving media, saving journalism, and I absolutely agree with that. But it shouldn't be charity. It should be better managed and better monetized. And in going back to consent or pay, I think that, for example, quality media owners had 6 years to build that trust, to build that communication on value exchange, and deserve that consent. Now we are all jumping on consent or pay as if it was a way to save quality media and news. And I think that's just a Trojan horse for different types of business models, i.e. attack. I hope it hasn't been a journey too long as a journey.
No, listen, this is, and thank you, because this leads to a few points. Number one is that in the book, I'm going to talk about Web 4. I'm the first person talking about Web 4. And Web 4 is also involved in what I call restoration networking. So, and this is absolutely, it's a freemium model. Freemium works just fine. Now, historically, the thought has been, if you're not paying for it, then you're the product being sold. You're not the customer. So on the one hand, it's good to see this no ads option by the surveillance capitalists. So on Netflix, on other platforms, you can pay, on YouTube, you can pay a modest fee and have, basically no ads. Now, that doesn't mean they're not targeting and tracking you and collecting your data. That would be really nice if it also meant that. So this is also why we need to inspire the next generation of social media, because it's possible. And I proved it at MeWe with a freemium model that serves the user, that you can make money, and you can make plenty of money. And I expand on that revenue model in the book. So, that's what we've got to do.
Mm-hmm. And I like perhaps that if you could expand on that, because I'm halfway through. I mean, I'm gonna finish it. I'm loving the book, but of course, to prepare for this session, I listened to the podcast and so on, a couple of them. And you mentioned that in terms of revenue models, it could be that the user also earns money somehow. Right? Earns money. There's moderation. So could you expand on that? Because I think this is fascinating and a radical approach to how things are happen today, right?
It's interesting. If you look at Web3 users earn money through cryptocurrency and through moderation. They upvote and downvote. And what I've said for years, because Web3 social media companies have been around for 7 or 8 years now. There's Minds, there's Steam, there was Voice, there's other ones. They don't work on scale, not just because blockchain doesn't scale, but because as human beings, we're not interested in monetizing our close personal relationships. We're interested in communicating and expanding our friendship and sharing our lives. So this idea of Web3, and I talk about in this book, this is fundamentally incorrect. This assumption that human beings want to monetize their relationships. So Web4, the way the users share, so Web4 is very much, capitalism, and it's really more of what we call conscious capitalism or B Corps, which are very successful, ethical capitalist companies. And in this case, if you're a highly engaged user, when the company, does its profit analysis at the end of the year, the users are going to share. They will get, like what's called a dividend. Now, there's a user advisory board that helps decide this. Elected by the users, there's a user advisory board that also gives input into how the site is moderated, into how rewards are given. Creators are highly incentivized to participate and to create great engagement with great content. It's really a very straightforward, in a certain way, model where it's everybody wins. And of course, the investors and the executive team still have plenty of authority, and everybody wins. And I've written it out very clearly, including added a whole bunch of what are called revenue superchargers. And it works. This stuff, it's all proven. So you take parts that have proven already to work, and then you put them together and you put a model together where the user feels respected, trusts the site. Even with MeWe, users trusted MeWe so much that historically, out of a rating of 5 being the best, in the iTunes and in Google's Play Store, MeWe was always at about 4.4, and Facebook is at about 2.3, even though, we couldn't crack the code on Facebook because they vastly interfered with MeWe's success and with all competitors' success. This is well documented. That's personal social media, by the way. Meta, Facebook, is not a competitor to X. It's not a competitor to Instagram. That's why it has Instagram. It's not a competitor to TikTok. Facebook, like MeWe, is what's called personal social media by the US government, because fundamentally your contacts are your family and your friends, and then you connect with groups and pages and like-minded people, etc.
Brilliant. Edilsa, do you have a question?
Yes,
Go
I
ahead.
love the point you're making that in terms of not monetizing relationships, you're monetizing your own activity and your own engagement. And as I threw that around to the people that I know, one of the things they got concerned about was, well, are you incentivizing overuse? I'm a culprit. I'm on social media 7+ hours a day as something I'm definitely trying to minimize with some of the hacks that you introduced in your book to children. But I think, how do you incentivize meaningful, healthy relationship with social media as opposed to, yes, I could be using social media for a lot and get more money because I'd be in your profit sharing scheme. But how do you create this meaningful, healthy relationship with social media at the same time that we're winning?
Two ways. That's a great question. So the structures are there in restoration networking. Number one, if you're over engaged, but people aren't engaging with you, then that's flagged automatically. That doesn't work. So anybody trying to game the system, that'll be flagged. And the user advisory board will have a lot of say in that also, but that's flagged. So, and number two is that the users also still participate in moderation, but they don't get paid for it. So again, if a member is clearly, blatantly attempting to game the system and over engage, members are going to flag that person, and then there'll be a review. And part of the review system is that there can be a review of your peers too. So the jury of your peers, which Twitter also instituted. They're not using it very strongly right now, but it's a very good process. So I talk in the book about how we modify that to make it highly effective. So the idea really is, it's preemptive. So this, you're asking a great question. We've got to preemptively look at the way, because it's always cat and mouse. And also there's an appendix with, I think, a 7-point plan on how we get rid of bots and trolls. It's not that hard, everybody, to get rid of bots and trolls. Nobody's wanting to do it. You know why? They make money. for them. Remember, now here's something crazy. Remember, anybody have a blue check on X right now? If you have a blue check, a bot and a troll can get a blue check too. Musk's original proposal was we'll do user ID verification on the blue check, and then we'll get rid of the bots and trolls. Well, then he realized that half of X are bots and trolls, and that drives his revenue. And he's already, the company's already worth 1/4 of what it was worth. So bots and trolls have credit cards, because bots and troll farms are run by adversarial countries, and it's really easy to program a bot or a troll to be able to plug in, just programming, plug in, use the blue check system, plug in your credit card, plug in a name, boom, you got a blue check. So, we can fix all this stuff.
I mean, this has been happening back in 2015, 2016 already, when I was at Facebook here in the UK, when we had the Brexit referendum coming up. The amount of misinformation and blatant lies that I reported internally, which is supposed to be an easier, more efficient service, I was just pushed back, and I'm like, oh, it drives engagement. And now we have Brexit.
Exactly. And Brexit is a perfect example of adversarial countries wanting to disrupt this democracy. And, if we had user ID verification and there were no bots and trolls, I don't think Brexit would have stood a chance.
I agree.
Let's use that as a segue to our next question or block, or this wasn't even the block, but it's so interesting, which is free speech. So we spoke about this, Mark, in our conversation in Portugal, and is there free speech today? And I mean, should the government interfere? Because it is crazy. It's like shit has hit the fan in Brazil. It's absolutely insane what's going on. Like the government taking down accounts from officials. It's insane. So I'd love to hear your take on this.
It's interesting because I have been recognized many times as one of the leading proponents of free speech. And there needs to be an asterisk there, because I'm a proponent of civil discourse, and I always have been. MeWe has always had very strict terms and conditions, but unbiased. We don't care if you're for a vaccine or against the vaccine, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, if you're, and by the way, just as a side note, I appreciated, maybe I'm out of line here, but I appreciated when I read in the news that the first lady in Brazil had told Elon Musk where he could go, but here's the thing, and I was on Fox, which is a very conservative outlet, and I'm on there a lot. For everybody, I am interviewed by all sides of the media because my perspective is common sense. I'm not for the left, I'm not for the right, I'm for common sense. So MeWe has always had strict moderation terms around inciting violence and posting hate. And you could, if you want to challenge something, you can, but we're very, very strict. That's why a few years ago there was a site called Parler, and Apple and Google and AWS kicked Parler out. And I've said this on Fox News right after the January 6th insurrections 4 years ago. I said, good people can't tolerate sites that are full of hate and violence and racism. They can't. So we don't go there. And, so we have to have moderation. It's just got to be fair, even-handed, nonpartisan, non-biased. And the host, Maria Bartoloma, said, God bless you, Mark. So I'm very much for civil discourse. And this means that, when Facebook banned conversations about vaccines, I thought, are you kidding me? Remember, everybody, the backbone of democracy is disagreement. That means that the fundamental, what perhaps the most important aspect of democracy is the ability to disagree without worrying about going to jail or being punished. Or it's okay to have your opinion, but it's not okay to start yelling and screaming about these people should be killed or whatever that. That's not civil discourse. But this is how democracy operates. We're safe to disagree. It's beautiful.
You use the word neutrality in terms of civil discourse in the book, and I wonder, do you think that neutrality can spark engagement? I think you just talked about disagreement and that being something that's being monetized in a bad way today. Do you think neutrality can be monetized?
Well, and I'm not sure what you mean by monetizing. I know neutrality, look, Twitter before X, because that was a different company, Twitter. Twitter had great engagement, and people of the world really participated in Twitter because it was perceived to be neutral. It wasn't perceived to be politically biased, left or right. It didn't seem to have a bias in its moderation, except around violence, and hate, and it wasn't great at it. But we can see what's happened. Twitter has, one quarter, it's worth one quarter of the value. It's lost a tremendous amount of engagement and members. So I think the answer right there is that, and remember, the more engagement you have, the more use you have, the more money you're able to make through a variety of means. I think the answer is very clear, already proven.
And I have a question on Web4, on the future. I can see how in media, traditional media monetization, digital advertising, how hard it is to beat business models and incentives. So one thing that is paralyzing digital advertising, for example, from my perspective in the day-to-day, is conflicting incentives, conflicting business models. How do you think that the future and Web4, or whatever the future will hold, will actually happen and will not get stuck into the quicksands of all these conflicting, self-interested business models and incentives and objectives?
Let's start with the premise that the youth, the next generation of entrepreneurs who are today, let's say, somewhere between 15 and 30 or 15 and 25, we can see from all the surveys their interest in privacy and the restoration of privacy. And really, how we choose where we, participate is really based on the service rather than the business model, as long as the business model is ethical. So this again comes back to the free market. And there will be plenty of ways. I also think that we're going to see many more regulations, particularly in the EU. We're going to get tighter because GDPR doesn't really work the way it was intended to work. Companies still pay the fines and work around it. I think what's happening in Great Britain, the idea that a social media executive can be put in jail for breaking the law. Now that's interesting. And I've written about this in the United States. That to me is interesting. I don't think a user should be put in jail if a site lets that user do something that maybe they shouldn't do or say something. But a social media executive who purposely allows their company to break the law, I think this is a really good idea to suggest that maybe they should go to jail for a little bit of time. So as we get stricter rules about how to use data, how to target, how to collect data, and this is all coming, it's not going to get lighter. It's going to get tighter. So, and then business models are going to have to be creative. Again, I think we're going to see more, and Alessandro, I know you're not a fan of this, but I think we're going to see more options for paying not to get ads. And then ultimately what we, as users, we want to argue for paying not to have our content grabbed, but Sir Tim Berners-Lee, because we're moving into data portability. This is how we save the free market. Now, this is going to happen. It's going to happen in the United States. It's going to happen in Europe. It may take 3 to 5 years, but we're going to get a data portability protocol so that every site will have to engineer for that, so that we can, right now, if you want to leave Facebook and go to a new social media platform that maybe is more amenable to, Cornelia and the rest of us, you can't get your friends to go. The network effect, they're so stuck on Facebook. And the other thing is, you can't download your content easily. You can ask them for a download, but there's no way to take that download and then upload it anywhere else. Nobody has built an uploader for your downloaded meta content because they download it in such a messy way, it's impossible to upload. And as soon as someone builds an uploader today, the meta engineers will change how it's downloaded, so that uploader will be obsolete the next day. So data portability is coming. Alessandro, we're going to solve this problem.
Thank you.
We have one question here from Dalia. Dalia is a member also of the community, and she's based in Egypt. So I'll show on stage. So can you read it?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to read it out loud just for everybody. How do you see Trump winning the election, his impact on all this, not to mention Elon Musk being in the loop? All right, now, it's a perfect question because I wrote an article in a in an American outlet called Newsweek last week, and it was exactly answering this question. So, because this is really unprecedented. Musk with X and Trump with True Social, and then Trump's cozy relationship with Fox, which I understand in Europe is looked at more as entertainment and not really truth. It's amazing how many people in America actually think Fox is telling the truth. All news seems to have some kind of bias today. So, but here's the thing: Trump's agenda and Trump's messaging can get much farther than any president in the history of the United States because of his participation and his relationships in the news and social media online arena. So this is unprecedented. However, and here's the asterisk here, here's the yeah, but we also know Trump doesn't like Meta. He doesn't like Mark Zuckerberg. In July, he said if he was elected president, he was going to put Mark Zuckerberg in jail. So I think Trump is going to allow the Federal Trade Commission in the United States to continue prosecuting Meta for what's called antitrust. And if they break up Meta and they break up the monopoly of Meta and Facebook, then this will also help foster a new era of competition, new startups. It'll also give Trump, True Social, and X more members if they start to break these things up because people will migrate. But at the same time, what we have to do is liberate the free market. And interestingly enough, Trump might be the guy to do that.
Thank you. Now, Edusa, you wrote here. Would you prefer to ask or doesn't matter? I can put on stage.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask, riffing off of Alessandro's, he talked about emerging things. Consent emerged, and then it was consent with pay. And your book does a great job of addressing the most pressing challenges: bots, disinformation, underage users. What emerging risks do you anticipate, like that we maybe don't know today, and that you might need to account in the restoration network as we go ahead? And I think you talk about a few plans to how to address them. These advisory boards that you talked about, peer committees, but would love for you to chat a little bit about almost like how do we tackle the unknown and adapt?
Well, listen, and thank you, Edessa, for asking such great questions. That clearly, Edessa is appears to be the youngest and most hip. I mean, how do we riff on this? I love your language. Your language is great. So it's always cat and mouse, and so in the history of bots and trolls, in the history of content and moderation, it's always what we call a cat and mouse. So the good guys do something, the bad guys adjust. The bad guys do something, the good guys adjust. That will continue. We just want to get the bad guys, instead of being such a huge, number, the bots and trolls, they're just so massive. We want to narrow it down. if we can get the bots and trolls to be 5% of what they are today, that's a huge win because they'll game it. So, and it's going to be AI versus AI. This is really, and we talk about this in the book, right? The good use of AI. So AI is going to be very astute when programmed properly to watch for bots and trolls, to watch for the adaptation of the bots and trolls to game the restaurant, Web 4, to figure out, and so in this case, we may also benefit in rather huge ways from a really brilliant AI working for us, in this game, which is unprecedented, which we didn't have before.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm not sure if this is a question or just let's see where I go with this, because it's more like about, in one of the podcasts, you talk about people consuming media. They use social media to consume the news, right? A lot. People are typically consuming their news through their social media feeds. And I noticed that in Brazil, in the elections in the US now as well. So what I started doing was to consume the alternative media, because everything that you see on TV and I think like CNN or it's so it's so one-sided. It's either Kamala or Trump, and I think I started realizing that the best way to get some kind of truth it's through podcasters and alternative media, because otherwise it's all BS. You don't know. It's all uh, you know. You don't get the reality, and when you consume content from a creator, at least you know where they stand for. They have a line of thinking, and you say, okay, this guy's maybe he's a little more to the right or to the left, but at least you start curating your own feed and news. And I'd like to ask you, because all these things they're so intertwined, like media and social media nowadays. So where do you see this going? Yeah.
It's interesting because there's been a big effort in the United States to regulate social media and identify that. Carlos, just make sure. Can you hear me okay? Good. Okay. So there have been periodic efforts to change, Meta, and make it have to follow the rules of, being a news broadcasting station. I don't see that we're going to be able to regulate for neutrality in news presentation. What I see the opportunity for is more sites. There's a new site in the United States called News Nation. It prides itself on reporting news, not reporting bias to the right or to the left. This is something we used to count on Twitter for. So there's an opportunity here for this resurrection of news media, and restoration networks will participate the same way. They're just going to allow, just like Mimi does, as long as follow the rules, and then you can have the conversations you want. It's not about vaccines being good or vaccines being bad. It's not about things like that. It's about civil discourse. So what I think we're going to see now, here's the danger, and Carlos, I really want to touch on the danger of what you're talking about. If half the people that are on Meta, which is that, therefore, and half the world is on Meta, so 1/4 of the world gets their news on Facebook, and Facebook decides what stories they're going to boost, then we have a problem. So, and this is also part of the new, era where social media has just, run ahead of governments and anybody's ability to understand the impact or to regulate. And this is where critical thinking comes in. So even if Meta is regulated like a news outlet, we see that news outlets are still biased, in a very large way. So that doesn't solve the problem. The free market solves the problem. And Carlos, what you're doing, it's interesting because, again, most of those podcasters have a point of view, and that's really no different than choosing to watch Fox, which I don't think a lot of people in Europe do, is my understanding, unless it's for entertainment, versus choosing to watch CNN or BBC or again, BBC, NPR, these public broadcasting networks are technically supposed to be neutral, and yet the way that the world has been trained by bots and trolls and everybody is not to trust them, to think that they're very much to the left, which actually they're really not. They're just reporting the news as they see it factually, while, they're being painted as being an arm of the left. But I don't see it that way. So, in particular in America, I know many Americans who prefer to watch PBS, Public Broadcasting System, for the news, because they think that's going to be the most unbiased news they're going to get.
I think this is where we go back to in the very beginning what Ilse says, is social media good? I think it's both good and evil at the same time. I think a really good example was something that happened here in Europe in the last 1.5 weeks, with an incident in Amsterdam where all the news outlets provided one side of the story that was completely wrong. But thanks to social media, there were all the videos that you could see of what really happened in Amsterdam, and people could see the truth in that way. So social media still has some good in there by exposing some of those news outlets who are just blatantly lying. So there's that.
That's a great, citizen reporter, right?
Yeah.
Citizen reporting is going to become more important. But again, here's the asterisk here. We have to watch out for the deepfakes.
Yes.
Now, I actually talked on Fox. I was interviewed on Fox earlier in the year and wrote an op-ed about deepfakes, about how to spot them, what we're watching for. Right now, it's pretty easy to spot a deepfake if you're educated on how to spot them. Deepfakes are going to get better. So, and by the time a deepfake is flagged, it's often after it's been seen by a few million or millions of people. Again, this is where the good guy AI comes in to help on good sites. And then, one of the challenges with moderating deepfakes is if you're a site that has a bias, left or right, and there's a deepfake that supports your bias, is your AI going to be programmed to allow that deepfake to perpetuate? Or are you going to be neutral and you're going to program your AI to take it down because it's wrong? It's a deepfake. So there are a lot of things in this sort of democratic world that we need to address right now. Now, we're not going to fix this all at once. Odessa, I'm sorry about that. It won't be fixed all at once. But remember, everybody, the world is perfect in its imperfection. And so it's always, this sort of spiral. We're dealing with tech. Now, there's good news that our oldest politicians, let's say who are 80, tech has been around since they were 50. So chances are they can no longer say, I don't understand it. 10 years ago, we still had a bunch of politicians who never even, used a computer. So, those days are gone. So this is helpful. So as we move forward, pretty soon we'll have the Facebook generation in politics. And so this, I think, is going to be very helpful. And, Elon Musk is such a paradox because remember, he wants to regulate AI, right? He wants to save the environment. And yet, on the other hand, he's, best friends with somebody who is completely a non-believer in saving the environment and, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a fascinating world we live in. And our job is just to keep moving it so that it's better and better. And especially, maybe privacy is too late for us. But for our kids and for the younger generation and for their kids, we can fix this. So if anybody says to you, it's too late, no, you say back to them, it's too late for us, maybe. Our data is already out there, but not for our kids and future generations. And then if they say, but user ID verification, doesn't that end privacy? And then the answer is no. It protects privacy because, and here's how I answer this, because I was against user ID verification for the last 15 years, and I've changed my mind. They already know who we are. Now keep this in mind. They already know who we are. Now who's they? The government, the social media companies, the advertisers, marketers, the adversarial countries who bought all our data on the dark web. So why don't we put this to good use? When our kids are born, they get a social security number, they get, they're registered in your country. They already know who we are. Let's protect our privacy. Let's make sure our data can't be grabbed by the government, by, a social media company, by a surveillance capitalist. Let's take privacy back. Let's acknowledge that they already know that we're in the world, that we exist, and let's protect our democracies and our kids, and let's enjoy our connectedness that the web provides. That's what Tim invented the World Wide Web for. So that's our opportunity.
Amen. Thank you very much for this. We are on to 1 hour and 6 minutes. I would love to stay here for 3 hours, but I'm sure you're very busy. I could stay on, no problems, but this was amazing.
Yeah.
Very helpful, very helpful. I hope you all enjoyed as well. Edilsa, Alessandro, Cornelia, thank you so much for your participation. And yeah, in our community here, Mark, we're trying to do something different. So we're always inviting exceptional people like them to get the discussions, more rich, because I think they can always bring different perspectives to the whole discussion. So, Mark, yes, I will make sure that we put the link in the show notes as well, where this is going to be available for your book. But let's do some branding now. Let's sell orders. So, how can we sell your book? Where can they find it, please?
So everybody, first of all, and I just put the link. Now that's the Amazon link. That'll get to US Amazon, and then you can order through US Amazon, or you can find your local Amazon. Thank you, Cornelia. Thank you. And this I really love. Thank you, everybody, for reading the book. And, I'm going to share. I hope you found it. I wrote it to be entertaining. It's punchy. This is not 500 pages. This is 155 pages of text, about another 15 pages of appendices telling us how we fix bots and trolls, telling the government what to do. And it's entertaining. I'm going to tell you stories that are going to be jaw-dropping, and they're all verified. In the back of the book, there's over 400 footnotes, which are, the links to everything that I talk about. So you know that I am doing my very best to tell the truth. You can get the book wherever books are sold. You can order the book. It's available on Kindle also. And you can reach me. I just put an email address, mark@restoretheweb.com, M-A-R-K. If you want to reach out and connect with me. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you know me. But yeah, listen, the whole point, everybody, is to get this conversation going, because all of our friends and the world feels a little bit disempowered, like that there's nothing we can do. But that's not true. And almost in every chapter, there's a punch list of things you can do right now with your kids, with yourself, how to spot when you're being phished, how to spot a deep fake, how to manage your kids on social media. It's all right there, because we can do things right now. And also, if you're inclined to be an entrepreneur, or somebody who's thinking about it, there's a huge opportunity. I talked about it at Web Summit for user identification systems, for new social media products, for all kinds of great stuff. So yeah, thank you, Carlos. What a great opportunity. What a great panel. I just want to acknowledge the panelists. You guys are spectacular. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you,
all.
Mark.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Really appreciated the time.
So did I. Thank you. This is a great panel.
Awesome. Thanks. So I'm pausing the session. Yes.